Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. 5 lines. That's what it took to end a 6-year marriage. By the time Friday evening rolled around, I was sitting in my home office in our Beacon Hill brownstone, staring at my laptop screen, but my mind wasn't on the code I was supposed to be reviewing. It was replaying every calculated word that had come out of my wife's mouth over the past week. Each line had been delivered with perfect casualness, designed to cut deep while maintaining plausible deniability. But instead of breaking me down like she probably expected, they did something else entirely. They woke me up. Monday morning started like any other October day in Boston. I was making coffee in our kitchen when Claire walked in, already dressed for work in one of those sharp blazer and slacks combinations she wore to impress her luxury real estate clients. She was scrolling through her phone with that familiar look of distraction. Without even glancing up, she dropped the first bomb. Sometimes I wonder if we both just got comfortable instead of actually building something meaningful. Just like that. No context, no warning. She said it the same way someone might comment on the weather forecast. I stopped mid-pour, the coffee pot hovering over my mug. I looked at her and asked what she meant. She finally looked up from her phone, shrugged, and said, "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." Forget I said anything. But I didn't forget. How could I? That phrase echoed in my head all day while I sat in my financial district office, supposedly architecting software solutions for our tech company's newest client. We both just got comfortable. 6 years of marriage, 8 years together total, and that's how she saw us. That's how she saw me. I realized then that this wasn't some random thought. This was calculated. This was her testing the waters, seeing how I'd react to her disrespect. Tuesday brought line number 2 during dinner. We were eating takeout from this Thai place we used to love, sitting across from each other in our dining room in silence. Out of nowhere, she said, "I saw the Hendersons today. They seem so alive together. Makes me realize what we're missing." This time, she was looking right at me when she said it. There was no mistaking her meaning. I put down my fork, leaned back in my chair, and asked her directly what she thought we were missing. She gave me that condescending smile I was starting to recognize and said, "Connection, passion, the things that matter." The way she emphasized things that matter made my blood run cold. Not because I was hurt exactly. I was angry. Who did she think she was talking to? Some pushover who'd beg for her approval? I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Well, those things require effort from both people, don't they?" Her smile faltered for just a second. Good. Let her think about that. Wednesday night's line came during what should have been a normal conversation about weekend plans. I suggested we visit my parents in Newton since we hadn't seen them in months. That's when she hit me with, "I can't keep pretending to enjoy things I don't care about anymore." The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't just talking about visiting my parents. She was talking about our entire life together, our shared experiences, our memories. Everything we'd built was apparently just an act for her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get emotional. Instead, I calmly asked, "How long have you been pretending?" She tried to backtrack, claiming she didn't mean it that way, but the damage was done. I could see through her game now. She was systematically dismantling our marriage, one cruel phrase at a time. Probably hoping I'd be the one to finally call it quits so she could play the victim. Thursday morning brought the most revealing attack yet. We were having a rushed breakfast before work when she looked up from her phone and said, with this dreamy tone in her voice, "Preston was telling me about his place in Nantucket. He knows how to actually live, not just exist." Preston. She'd mentioned a man's name with admiration. My antenna went up immediately. "Who's Preston?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "A client," she said too quickly. "Someone who understands that life is short." I filed that name away in my mental notes. Preston. A client who supposedly understood how to live. The alarm bells weren't just ringing anymore. They were screaming. Friday evening was when she delivered the final blow. I was working in my home office when she appeared in the doorway around 6:30. She looked at me with this rehearsed expression and said, "I think we need to talk about whether this marriage still makes sense for either of us." There it was. The culmination of her week-long campaign. She'd systematically torn down our marriage and was now declaring it officially dead. I set down my pen and looked at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a bitter smile, but a knowing smile that seemed to unnerve her. "You know what?" I said. "You're absolutely right. This isn't working anymore. I stood up, kissed the top of her head like nothing had changed, and said, "Thanks for making that so clear." She called after me as I walked away, probably expecting some kind of dramatic confrontation, but I didn't turn around. I had work to do. Those 5 lines had done more than reveal her true feelings about our marriage. They'd revealed her strategy. She thought she was manipulating me into being the bad guy, the one who'd give up first. What she didn't realize was that she'd just given me the perfect roadmap for my own plan. See, while she was busy delivering her carefully crafted insults, I was learning something valuable about my wife. She was calculating, manipulative, and completely convinced of her own cleverness. But she'd made one critical error. She'd underestimated me. The weekend passed in tense silence. She disappeared Saturday afternoon, claiming she needed to think. I used the time to begin my own thinking, the strategic kind. The following Monday, I became a student of my own wife. Not the lovesick kind who hangs on every word, but the calculating kind who documents patterns. The changes in her behavior weren't subtle once I started paying attention. Take her phone, for instance. She'd always been casual about it before, leaving it on counters, asking me to check messages while she was driving. Now it was glued to her hand, face down on every surface, password protected with an urgency that screamed guilt. When it buzzed during dinner Tuesday night, she practically lunged for it, then caught herself and tried to play it cool. "Work stuff," she said, not looking at me. "At 8 p.m.? I asked, cutting into my steak. "You know how it is," she replied, but her fingers were already flying across the screen. I knew exactly how it was. I also knew that her luxury real estate firm didn't send urgent texts after business hours. But I didn't call her on it. Instead, I filed it away with everything else I was collecting. Wednesday brought the first real test of my new approach. She was in the bathroom getting ready for work when her phone rang on the nightstand. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. When she came out and saw the missed call, her face went white for just a second before she recovered. "Probably spam," she said, but she took the phone into the bathroom to check the voicemail. When she came back out, I was sitting on the bed, fully dressed, watching her with mild amusement. "Everything okay?" I asked with fake concern. "Fine," she snapped, then caught herself. "Sorry, just stressed about the presentation today." "What presentation?" I asked innocently. She froze. There was no presentation. We both knew it. But instead of pressing her, I just nodded and said, "Well, good luck with that." The relief on her face was pathetic. She thought she'd dodged a bullet. What she didn't realize was that I was counting every lie, every slip-up, every moment of panic. I'd also started doing something else that week. Something that would prove crucial later. We'd always shared our locations on Find My Phone, a safety thing from when we first moved to the city. And I'd set up automatic cloud backups on our shared home computer years ago. She'd never bothered to check what was backing up. Her photos started syncing automatically, including the ones she took but never sent me. That same night, while she was supposedly working late, I reviewed those backed up photos. What I found made my blood run cold, then hot, then cold again. Selfies in expensive lingerie I'd never seen. Photos dated last Thursday when she'd claimed to be working late. Screenshots of text messages that said things like, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," signed with a single letter P. Preston, her client, who knew how to really live. I downloaded everything to a secure folder. Every photo, every text screenshot, every piece of evidence of her betrayal. By Thursday, the phone calls were happening regularly. Always when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Always requiring her to leave the room. Always followed by mood swings that ranged from giddy excitement to guilty anxiety. The pattern was so obvious, it was almost insulting. Did she really think I was that oblivious? That evening, I decided to have some fun with her paranoia. She was on the couch texting furiously when I walked over and sat down right next to her. Close enough to see the screen if I wanted to. She immediately tilted the phone away and stopped typing. "Don't let me interrupt," I said, settling back into the cushions. "You seemed really focused on whatever you were writing." "It's nothing important," she said, but her hands were shaking slightly. "Must be pretty engaging nothing," I replied. "You've been staring at that screen for 20 minutes. She looked at me then, trying to read my expression. Was I suspicious? Was I testing her? The uncertainty was eating her alive. Good. Let her wonder. Let her stress about what I knew and what I didn't know. "Just catching up with a friend," she finally said. Anyone I know? I asked casually. Another pause. Another calculation. I don't think so. Someone from college. That's nice, I said, reaching for the remote. It's good to reconnect with old friends. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here she was, probably planning my emotional destruction with some other man, and I was calmly encouraging her social connections. The cognitive dissonance was clearly messing with her head. Thursday night was her regular late work night. I tracked her location on Find My Phone. She wasn't at her Back Bay office. She was at the Intercontinental Hotel bar in the financial district. I didn't confront her. I saved a screenshot with the timestamp. When she came home at 11:30 and immediately headed for the shower, I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. Friday morning, I called in sick to work, the first time in 3 years. I needed time to think, to plan. Claire left for the office with a suspicious glance, but didn't question it. That weekend, while she was supposedly shopping with friends, I made calls of my own. First, to a divorce attorney named Patricia Brennan. Then to an accountant. Finally, to a private investigator named Harold Simmons who specialized in divorce cases involving infidelity. By Monday morning, I had meetings scheduled and a plan in motion. The attorney was straightforward. With evidence of adultery, she said, Massachusetts law allows for fault-based divorce. She'd forfeit most claims to equitable distribution, especially since you own the house before marriage. The accountant was equally direct. I'll need documentation of any separate accounts she might have opened. If we find anything suspicious, we can freeze them with a court order. By Wednesday of that week, he called back. Found something. Your wife opened a separate checking account 6 months ago. Small transfers from your joint account, never more than $200 at a time. Too small to trigger alerts. But it adds up. She's got about $23,000 stashed. The timeline hit me like a punch. 6 months. She'd been planning this for half a year. Can you freeze it? I asked. With the divorce filing and evidence of adultery, yes. The judge will issue a temporary restraining order on all marital assets. The private investigator was the most interesting. Give me 2 weeks, he said. I'll get you everything you need. I provided him with everything I had so far. The backed up photos. The location data. The name Preston Walsh. Preston Walsh, he repeated, writing it down. I'll look into him. That week unfolded with eerie normalcy. Claire seemed almost relieved that I'd stopped questioning her. She mistook my calm for defeat. Tuesday afternoon of that third week, I took off work early. I told Claire I had a client meeting that got canceled. Instead of going to the office, I went home. Preston's Porsche Cayenne was parked on our street. Silver, flashy, exactly the kind of car a man trying to prove something would drive. I didn't park in the garage. I parked down the street and walked back quietly. I entered through the back door, the way I sometimes did when carrying groceries. I could hear voices upstairs. In my bedroom. Intimate voices that had no business being in my home. Instead of charging up there like some cliché, outraged husband, I did what I always do. I thought strategically. I pulled out my phone and started recording audio. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. I could legally record in my own home. Then I positioned myself in the hallway near the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, and I listened. He's actually making this easier than I thought, Claire's voice said. The therapy was brilliant. I'm establishing the record that I tried. When will you tell him? A male voice. Deeper, confident. Preston, we've been planning this long enough. After the holidays, Claire replied. His family all together. I'll be the victim who tried everything. They'll blame him for not fighting harder. And the house? Preston asked. Massachusetts is equitable distribution, Claire said. I could hear the smile in her voice. I'll get half of everything. The brownstone alone is worth $2.3 million now. He bought it for $800,000 before we met. Smart girl, Preston said. My lawyer says with the therapy documentation and your evidence of his emotional unavailability, you might get more than half. The secret account was your idea, Claire said. When we're together, I want to make sure I'm contributing equally. Preston laughed. Baby, you don't need to contribute. You just need to look beautiful and be free of dead weight. I can't believe I wasted 6 years, Claire said. But at least I'm getting paid for it. I stopped recording. I'd heard enough. I backed out of the house as quietly as I'd entered and sat in my car for 10 minutes, processing what I'd just learned. She wasn't just leaving. She wasn't just having an affair. She was running a con. And she'd just said it all out loud, on a recording, in my house. I didn't go back inside. I drove to my attorney's office and played her the recording. Patricia Brennan listened with a grim expression. When it ended, she looked at me and said, "This changes everything. With this evidence, we can file for fault-based divorce. She won't get the house. She won't get half. She'll be lucky to get her car." "Good," I said. "What else do we need?" "The PI's report," she said. "And we need to move fast." Over the next 2 weeks, I played my role perfectly. I agreed to Claire's couples therapy suggestion, just as she'd planned. We attended our first session the following Thursday with Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, a no-nonsense therapist Claire had carefully selected. Claire performed beautifully. She talked about our growing distance, about feeling unappreciated, about her efforts to save the marriage. Dr. Hartley took notes, asking probing questions. "Benjamin, how do you respond to Claire's concerns about emotional availability?" "I think she's right," I said calmly. "I've been focused on work. I haven't been present. I want to work on that." Claire's face showed confusion. She'd expected me to argue, to defend myself. Instead, I was agreeing with every criticism. After the second session, I could see her frustration building. By the third session, Dr. Hartley was asking different questions. "Claire, you mentioned your husband's lack of effort, but he seems quite engaged in this process. Can you give specific examples of what you'd like to see change?" Claire stumbled. She hadn't prepared for actual reconciliation. 2 weeks after I'd hired him, Harold Simmons delivered his full report. We met at a coffee shop in Cambridge. He slid a thick folder across the table. "Preston Walsh, age 41, divorced twice," he began. Both divorces followed the same pattern. He targets married women with assets, romances them through their divorces, dates them briefly afterward, then moves on. The report included everything. Photos of Preston and Claire at number 9 Park, holding hands, kissing outside his Millennium Tower condo, all documented with timestamps. "His first 2 ex-wives are willing to provide statements," Harold continued. "They want to warn your wife, but I told them to wait." "I do," I said. "Can you have them available next Saturday morning? There's something I need them to witness." During our fourth and final therapy session, 3 days before the revelation, Dr. Hartley said something that made Claire visibly uncomfortable. "I've noticed some inconsistencies in your narratives. Claire, you say you want to save this marriage, but your responses suggest otherwise." That night, as we drove home in silence, I knew the therapy had served its purpose. Dr. Hartley had seen through Claire's performance. 3 days later, on Friday evening, I decided it was time to let Claire know I knew. That night, Claire tried one last manipulation. She cooked my favorite dinner, wore a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, and attempted to recreate some version of marital bliss. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began over dessert. "About us being broken. I think maybe we can fix this." "Can we?" I asked, cutting into my steak. "We could go to counseling, work on our communication, maybe take a vacation together." I looked at her across the table. This woman who'd been systematically destroying our marriage while planning her exit strategy. "That's an interesting proposal," I said. "But I have a better idea." "What's that?" she asked hopefully. "How about instead of pretending we can fix something you've already destroyed, we just move forward with ending it honestly?" Her face went pale. "I don't understand." "I think you do," I said, pulling out my phone. "The question is whether you want to do this the easy way or the hard way." I showed her one photo. Just one. Her and Preston, kissing outside his building. She stared at the image, then looked up at me with a mixture of fear and defiance. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to protect myself. Long enough to plan exactly how this is going to end." "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to stop pretending," I said. "I want you to stop lying. And I want you to understand that your plan to destroy me while playing the victim just backfired spectacularly." She tried to cry then, tried to play the remorseful wife. But crocodile tears don't work on someone who's heard you planning their destruction. "Save it," I said calmly. "We both know this isn't remorse. This is panic. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." "That's not true," she whispered. "Isn't it?" I asked. "Because I have recordings that suggest otherwise. Hours of them. You planning my downfall, strategizing about making me the villain, calculating how to steal half my assets." The realization hit her like a physical blow. I had proof of the conspiracy, evidence of premeditation. Everything needed to destroy her narrative. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Tomorrow morning, you're going to get a very special surprise, I said, standing. And unlike your weeks of psychological torture, my surprise is going to be swift, devastating, and completely final. Sleep well, Claire. I left her sitting at the dinner table, probably trying to figure out what I knew and how much trouble she was in. I went to bed early. I needed rest for what was coming. Early Saturday morning, while Claire was still sleeping off the shock of the previous night, I made final preparations. Over the past week, I'd carefully invited everyone who mattered. My parents thought we were announcing something important about our marriage. They just didn't know what. Claire's parents received the same vague invitation. Our friends, my brother, Claire's sister Jennifer, all of them had been told this was important. I'd also called Dr. Hartley earlier in the week. I need you there as a professional witness, I told her. Claire has been using our therapy sessions to build a false narrative. Saturday morning, the truth comes out. She'd agreed reluctantly, clearly suspecting that Claire had been manipulating the process. Patricia Brennan would be there with papers already filed, and I'd coordinated with a process server to appear at exactly 10:15. Everything was ready. The next morning, Saturday, November 20th, I woke up with the clarity of a man who'd finally stopped pretending. While Claire was in the shower, I texted her, "My parents want to see us at Boston Common at 10. They have something they want to talk to us about." She came out of the bathroom, looking confused. "What's this about?" "I don't know," I lied smoothly. "They just said it was important. Something about family stuff." She agreed reluctantly, probably thinking it was normal family business. She had no idea what was waiting for her. We arrived at Boston Common just before 10. I'd reserved the pavilion area near the Frog Pond, the kind of reservation anyone can make for a family gathering. As we walked up, Claire saw the crowd assembled and stopped. "Ben, what is this?" Both our families were there. My parents, Patricia and Robert. My brother Michael. Her parents, Margaret and Richard Whitmore. Her sister Jennifer. 3 couples we'd been friends with for years. Some people she didn't recognize. Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, our couple's therapist. Patricia Brennan, my attorney. Harold Simmons, the private investigator. "What's going on?" Claire asked, her voice rising with panic. "You said we needed to talk about our marriage," I said calmly. "I thought we should do it with everyone who cares about us." Her eyes went wide. She looked around at the assembled witnesses, at her parents' confused faces, at the strangers she didn't know. "Ben, what are you doing?" "Everyone, thank you for coming," I said, addressing the crowd. "I know you're confused. 6 weeks ago, in early October, Claire told me she thought our marriage didn't make sense anymore. She's been preparing for this conversation for months, so I thought she deserved an audience." "Ben, stop this," Claire hissed. "This is private." "Is it?" I asked. "Because you made it strategic. You involved other people in our marriage. You made plans with someone else about how to destroy me. So no, Claire. This stopped being private the moment you decided to turn our marriage into a con." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the small Bluetooth speaker I'd set up earlier. "For the past month," I said to the crowd, "Claire has been systematically dismantling our marriage. 5 specific lines, delivered over 1 week in October, each designed to make me feel inadequate. I'd like you to hear them." I played the recordings. Her voice, isolated and clear, delivering each cutting phrase. The crowd listened in stunned silence. Sometimes I wonder if we both just got comfortable instead of actually building something meaningful. I saw the Hendersons today. They seem so alive together. Makes me realize what we're missing. I can't keep pretending to enjoy things I don't care about anymore. Preston was telling me about his place in Nantucket. He knows how to actually live, not just exist. I think we need to talk about whether this marriage still makes sense for either of us. When it ended, Claire's mother had her hand over her mouth. Her father's face had gone red. "This is insane," Claire said desperately. "This is manipulation. He's twisting things." "Am I?" I asked. "Let me introduce everyone to Preston Walsh." Then I spotted him, Preston Walsh, standing at the edge of the crowd, half hidden behind a tree. Harold had texted me earlier. Target is following subject to location. He's been tracking her movements too. Preston had been monitoring Claire's location, just as I'd been monitoring his. When she'd left our house that morning, he'd followed, probably suspicious about what she was doing. Now he was stuck, unable to leave without being noticed, unable to join her without revealing himself. "Preston, why don't you join us?" I called out, pointing toward him. "You're such an important part of this story." Everyone turned to look. Preston tried to leave, but the crowd had shifted, blocking his easy exit. "Everyone, this is Preston Walsh. He's the man my wife has been having an affair with for the past 4 months. Preston, would you like to tell everyone about your plan to help Claire get half my assets?" "I don't know what he's talking about," Preston said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Don't you?" I asked. I turned back to the crowd. "Let me play you another recording. This one is from a few weeks ago, in mid-October. In our bedroom, our marital home, while I was supposedly at work." I played the recording. Claire's voice planning my destruction. Preston's voice encouraging her manipulation. Their voices plotting together. He's actually making this easier than I thought. The therapy was brilliant. "I'll get half of everything. The brownstone alone is worth $2.3 million now. I can't believe I wasted 6 years. But at least I'm getting paid for it." When it finished, the silence was deafening. Claire's mother was crying. Her father wouldn't look at his daughter. My mother was hugging my arm. My brother looked like he wanted to punch something. Jennifer, Claire's sister, spoke first. "I told you," she said, her voice shaking. "I told you this would happen. I told you to stop." "You knew?" Claire's mother asked, turning to Jennifer. "She told me 2 months ago," Jennifer said. "She said she had a plan. She said Ben would never find out, and even if he did, she'd already positioned herself as the victim. I told her she was making a mistake." Claire tried to speak. "This is all fake. He edited those recordings. This is revenge because he knows I'm unhappy." I pulled a USB drive from my pocket and handed it to her father. "Full unedited recordings," I said, "plus time-stamped photos, financial records showing the secret account she's been building for 6 months, and a report from a private investigator showing Preston's pattern with 3 other married women." Richard Whitmore took the drive with shaking hands. "Preston has done this before," I continued. 3 times. He targets married women with assets, romances them through their divorces, dates them briefly afterward, then moves on. My investigator spoke with his first 2 ex-wives. They're willing to testify that this is his pattern. Preston made a move to leave. "Before you go, Preston," I called out, "did you tell Claire this was your 4th married woman? Did you promise her you'd stay with her after the divorce?" Preston stopped, turned around, and looked at Claire with something like pity. "This is crazy, lady," he said. "I never promised you anything permanent." The betrayal on Claire's face was complete. The man she'd destroyed her marriage for, the man she'd planned her future with, had just abandoned her in front of everyone. Preston walked away. Claire called after him, but he didn't turn around. A woman in a professional suit stepped forward from the crowd. "Claire Whitmore Carter?" Claire turned, tears streaming down her face. "What? You've been served." The process server handed Claire 2 sets of papers. Divorce petition filed in Suffolk County Superior Court, and a temporary order granting exclusive use of the marital home to Benjamin Carter. "You're required to vacate the residence by 6 p.m. today." Claire stared at the papers. "You can't do this." Patricia Brennan, my attorney, stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter, Massachusetts recognizes fault-based divorce. Your adultery and financial deception, as documented in these recordings and the investigator's report, forfeit your claims to equitable distribution. The brownstone was Mr. Carter's property before marriage. You're entitled to your personal belongings and your vehicle. Nothing else." "That's my house too," Claire screamed. "Actually, it's not," Patricia said calmly. "And with this evidence, no judge will rule in your favor." Claire turned to her parents. "Mom, Dad, you can't believe this. He's making me look like a monster." Her mother was still crying. Her father finally spoke, his voice cold and hard. "How could you do this?" he asked. "How could you throw away everything good in your life for that?" He gestured toward where Preston had been standing. "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Richard said. "I understand that you're not the daughter I raised. The daughter I raised had integrity." Claire looked around desperately. At her sister, who shook her head. At our friends, who wouldn't meet her eyes. At Dr. Hartley, who stood with her arms crossed, her professional mask hiding whatever she was thinking. "This is what happens," I said, addressing Claire directly for the first time, "when you mistake kindness for weakness. When you confuse patience with stupidity. When you think you can destroy someone who's better at this game than you are." I turned to the crowd one final time. I want everyone here to remember this moment. Remember what happens when someone chooses deception over honesty, betrayal over loyalty, and greed over love. Some lessons are worth learning publicly. I walked over to my parents, hugged them both, shook hands with my brother and our friends. Claire's mother approached me hesitantly. "Benjamin," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. We had no idea. If you need anything." "Thank you, Margaret," I said gently. "Take care of yourselves." As I walked away from Boston Common, I heard Claire's sister say quietly, "You brought this on yourself." I didn't look back. 3 weeks later, I sat in my home office, now officially my office alone, reviewing the initial divorce settlement documents. The final decree would take months, but with Claire refusing to contest anything, she had no grounds. The outcome was already certain. Everything had gone exactly as Patricia predicted. Claire got nothing beyond what the law required for basic necessities, which wasn't much considering her documented adultery and financial manipulation. The brownstone was mine. The investments were mine. Even her legal fees had become her problem when her attorney dropped her after she couldn't pay his retainer. Turns out her secret nest egg wasn't as substantial as she'd hoped, and Preston had vanished the moment things got complicated. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, Claire's sister. "She's staying with friends now. Lost her job yesterday." The whole thing became public at her workplace. I deleted the message without responding. Not my problem anymore. The irony was perfect. She'd spent months planning my social and financial destruction and had instead orchestrated her own. Her reputation in our community was destroyed. Her family had distanced themselves from her. Her friends had chosen sides, and most had chosen mine after hearing the evidence. But the best part wasn't her downfall. The best part was discovering who I really was when pushed to my limit. For 6 years, I'd been the accommodating husband, the patient partner, the man who avoided conflict for the sake of peace. I'd thought that made me a good person. What I learned was that it just made me a target. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Stella Fletcher, our neighbor from 3 doors down, holding a casserole dish. "Thought you might want a home-cooked meal," she said with a warm smile. "I know you've been through a lot lately." "That's very thoughtful," I said, accepting the dish. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" "I'd like that," she said. As we sat in my kitchen, she asked, "How are you holding up?" "Really?" "Honestly," I said. "Better than I expected. I thought I'd feel guilty about how everything went down, but I don't. I feel liberated." "You should," she said firmly. What she did was inexcusable. The whole neighborhood heard about it. I have to say, most of us weren't surprised. She always seemed calculating. We talked for an hour about everything and nothing. It felt natural, easy, completely different from the minefield conversations had become with Claire. When she left, she squeezed my hand and said, "You deserve better. I hope you know that." That evening, I reflected on the past 7 weeks. From the moment Claire delivered those 5 lines in early October to this quiet evening in mid-December, my life had completely transformed. The man who discovered those 5 lines would barely recognize who I'd become. That man had been reactive, hurt, desperate to salvage something that was already dead. This man was proactive, strategic, uncompromising about his own worth. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "It's me," came Claire's voice, broken and desperate. "I know," I said calmly. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I know that now." "Yes, you did. Can we talk? Can we try to work this out?" The old me might have felt sorry for her. Might have been tempted to throw her a lifeline. The new me understood that some bridges need to stay burned. "No," I said simply. "Please," she said. "I have nowhere else to go. I lost everything." "You didn't lose everything," I corrected her. "You threw it away. There's a difference." "I love you," she said desperately. "No, you don't," I replied without emotion. "You love the security I provided, the lifestyle I enabled, the safety net I represented. But you never loved me. If you had, you wouldn't have been capable of what you did." "That's not true," she sobbed. "It is true," I said, "and we both know it. You made your choice when you decided I was disposable. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." "You're different," she said, and for the first time in the conversation, she was right about something. "Yes, I am," I confirmed. "I'm better." I hung up and blocked her number. 6 months after the revelation, I was officially dating someone new. Her name was Olivia, and she was an architect I'd met 3 months earlier at the Museum of Fine Arts on a random Saturday afternoon. We'd started with coffee, then dinner, taking it slow. By late spring, it felt right to call it official. She appreciated my directness, my unwillingness to play games, my clear communication about boundaries and expectations. I'd learned that respect isn't something you can negotiate or beg for. It's something you command through your actions and maintain through your standards. My attorney informed me that Preston had moved on to his next target, just as predicted. Claire tried reaching out through mutual friends, through social media, even through Patricia's office. Each attempt was met with the same response: silence. Some people deserve second chances. Some people deserve to face the full consequences of their choices. The 5 lines that ended my marriage had taught me something invaluable. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. When someone treats your love like a weapon to be used against you, disarm them by taking it away. When someone bets against you, make sure they lose everything. I'd learned that being a good man doesn't mean being a weak man. That being kind doesn't mean being a pushover. That loving someone doesn't mean accepting disrespect from them. Most importantly, I'd learned that some endings aren't tragedies. Sometimes they're exactly what you need to become the person you were always meant to be. I was sitting at a cafe in Back Bay one spring morning when Olivia texted me, "Still on for dinner tonight?" I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely." As I looked out at the Boston skyline, the city where I'd built my life and defended my worth, I realized something simple but profound. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well without them. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.